and welcome everyone to our session today on Microsoft Forms. I'm excited to talk to you about Microsoft Forms because I really feel like this is an application that's part of our 365 suite of programs that doesn't get as much attention as some of the others. So when we talk about using Microsoft Forms, there's a lot that can go into it, a lot that we can get out of it. But just to give you an idea of some different types of forms, think about any form that you've ever seen, whether it's an online form, it's a paper form. We're filling out forms all the time. And having them as an electronic form where it's going to be available multiple ways is the easiest way to get people to fill out the actual forms and submit the results. So a lot of common types of forms that get used is surveys. We're always wanting to survey whether it's our customers, our employees. We want to do market research. We're doing training evaluations. Otherwise, we use forms for quizzes or assessments as well, whether it's certification or knowledge related, employee training assessments. We use it a lot for registrations and sign-up forms, just like you did for attending these types of sessions where we do event registrations, webinars, volunteer sign-ups, appointment booking, all kinds of different types of registration options. We also do it for feedback and reporting purposes, product feedback, bug or issue reporting. So if you have a problem in a system or a service, you can fill out a form to submit that. We do suggestion boxes, internal business forms, things like leave requests, an expense reimbursement, or IT support requests. We have educational specific forms where we can do peer reviews, parent consent forms. So if you just stop and think about when's the last time you filled out a form and how did you fill it out? And if you were the person that was actually collecting the form results, how did you analyze it? I remember back in the day when we only really did paper. Somebody would come into the office, whatever, we'd have them fill out a paper form. Then we'd go back into a system and enter the results of what that form was. Or I worked with a company called Scantron, where we had electronic forms that we created in software, and we would print those. We'd have everybody fill them out, take the number 2 pencil and do the little circles, make sure you colored it in good. The days of that kind of thing where then we'd take those results and we could scan them through that Scantron scanner. I remember going through training with all of that and years ago and just kind of learning about, what's a good form to even create. Those types of things can now be done directly through an application you already have with your 365 account. We don't have to get anything special. And when you see the integration with other applications, it just makes sense to use something that you already have than trying to have something to try and work with your other systems. So how do these forms actually work? Well, we usually want to start out with, of course, creating the form. So we'll create the form, then we're going to share the form so that we can collect the responses, collect the answers that we get back from the people filling them out. With Microsoft Forms, which it's had a recent update that we'll talk about, we do get real-time results and analysis. So if I have an Excel spreadsheet that I'm using to analyze my results, I can get that in real time. So if people are filling out the form and sending it back, it automatically can go into my Excel spreadsheet. We also can collaborate on this because we can actually be sharing this with other people, the results and the forms, of course, and it has integration with other applications, which you'll definitely see that today. Okay. So forms do have a little bit of limitations that I wanted to bring up. It is in your handout as well, but just to make sure that you understand. There's a maximum number of questions per form, which is 200. The maximum number of responses per form. If you have a personal Microsoft account, it's 200, but here with our work accounts, which is what I'm using, we can have up to 50,000 results. So if you're going to need more space than that, unfortunately, you might have to do it in 2 different sets. But it's still a pretty big limit. Okay. But as I had mentioned, it does integrate with other applications. This is a small list of some of what it can be, where it can be used. We can use forms right in Microsoft Teams. A use case for that is create and share a form directly in a channel or a chat. Then we can collect the results, of course, things like doing polls during meetings, those kind of things. We also can do things directly in Excel. We'll see a little bit on that today. We can also embed forms and do polls in emails and Outlook as well. We also have Power Automate, which Power Automate is a great way to get the results or responses back, because what if you did a form that is to have an approval? I'm going to fill out a form because I want to take these days off, and that needs to be sent to my manager for approval. That's where the Power Automate features come in, because we can actually create workflows to be able to do that for us. We can also have forms embedded directly within a SharePoint site. And back on Microsoft Teams, also, it can be right on a channel as a tab, which I'll show you. We can also use forms in OneNote, and we can use forms with Power BI. So we have a lot of integration with other Microsoft apps when it comes to using these forms. So where do we go to actually use a form? Most common for most situations is go to your Microsoft account. Then from there, you can go to your apps launcher and open the application Microsoft Forms. So from your list, I just saw mine. There it is. I had to find the icon there. So here's my icon over on the right-hand side on my screen for Microsoft Forms. Once you open this form or this app, you will see the existing forms that you already have access to, whether you created them or they were shared with you, and you'll be able to create new ones. And it's important to understand that we don't have to start from scratch, but we'll get to a little bit about that here in a moment. But just so you can see, this is where you can get started from, because I could create a form from here and then actually connect it to someplace else. So we can have it available in other areas, whether I'm going to put it on my company website, I have an intranet and SharePoint that I want to put it on. I want to put it in Microsoft Teams. I'm going to email it to people. We'll talk about how to get the form once it's created directly to the people that need to fill it out. But as you can see, up at the very top, it talks about exploring templates, these little tiles that I have going across. But as I kind of scroll down a little bit, this middle section is going to be my recent forms. I can do a filter to see all of my forms. I can go into filled forms. I can also go into shared with me, and I can have forms that are saved as favorites. I don't have any that are saved as favorites right now, but just so you can see, you have different categories going across the top. Now, of course, I will get into showing you how to create a form, and we will start with a blank form. So I want you to be thinking about what types of forms might you need. So as we kind of walk through how this works, first we'll talk about creating it, then we'll talk about submitting it, how do we get it to the people we want them to fill out, then we'll talk about how to see the results of the form. And I'll use an existing one and talk a little bit more about this screen as we do that, because I don't have a ton of results. I can't show you anything that's confidential, but I'll show you an example of how we can collect those results and things like that. But how do you know what to even put in the form? I've been through training on it, talking about Likert scales and, kind of learning the types of questions to ask and how to ask them and, giving people deadlines and things like that. So you might want to do a little bit of investigation, and you might want to work with a team of people to come up with things, because it's not always easy on your own to know what types of questions should I be asking. So let's say that we want to create an expense reimbursement form, but we're not even quite sure what questions we should be asking. Well, what I do personally is I usually use AI, whether it's going to be ChatGPT or I use Copilot. I usually will do something like that or go to the internet and look for existing ones so that I can kind of see, oh, I like this one, I like this one, this is the way this one works, that kind of thing, and try and figure out what would work best for my organization. So what I'm going to do is here in Copilot, I'm on the web search, not my 365 search, my work account. I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm really just going to ask it the question of what questions should I use in an expense reimbursement form? And we'll see what will come back as examples. Oh, that's pretty good. That was super quick. As a matter of fact, it came back and says it involves asking clear, concise questions that gather all necessary information for processing and auditing the expense. So it's first giving us employee information where we may need to be asking for things like their employee ID number, their email address. We might need that type of detail. And then also the expense detail. What was the date of the expense? We could have different categories, which I like these categories. Was it travel? Was it meals, lodging, office supplies? What type of expense? Putting in a description of the expense, who the merchant or the vendor was, and the location of the expense. Those are good things to be able to have on this form. Because what you want to be thinking about is, will I ever need to do a report on this information? Will I ever need to know, you know, give me a report of the different vendors that people have bought things from that they filled out this form for? Or do I want to be able to sort or filter by any of this criteria? You can't do that if you don't have the answers to it. So you really have to put in some planning time so that before you actually create the form, you know what's going to go in it. It's easier to create if you plan ahead. Now, of course, you've probably been to a session before, and I always talk about planning. I'm very big into planning because I've been the person that didn't plan. And I'll go in and I'll create a form. Then I need to make a bunch of changes to it because, this really doesn't flow this way. I don't like the way I said it. It needs to be a different type of question, whatever the case may be. It's going to be much easier on all of us if we do some planning ahead. And a lot of times for me, I do my planning in OneNote. Especially if I'm working with a team of people, we can just kind of, leave a loop component, or leave a form out there, or I'm sorry, not a form, but leave a OneNote notebook out there that people can be putting their ideas in. And then we can put some priorities to them. Somebody else may come back and say, well, if we ask this, we better drill in and ask this too. Because if I just say what state or country you're in, that may not be enough detail. Or if I just ask for your first name and not your last name, whatever type of information it is that you're looking for. Sometimes we need to ask corresponding questions along with it to get a little bit more clarity. So think about what do you want for responses? What kind of answers will you be looking for? What types of things do you need to put in it? And making sure that the questions are good. Can they understand what the question is? I've filled out forms before and it's like, I don't even know what they're asking. So make sure that you're putting the questions in there that will be clear to what it is that they're supposed to be doing. But anyway, you can see that this continues with financial information. It's got supporting document where we can put in an attachment, upload a file, that kind of a thing. They can put in additional notes, reimbursement details, the total amount of the reimbursement request, and then of course authorization could be added to this as well. So I really like using an AI tool to help me with these questions. And it gives us more ideas as to, oh, well, if I take this expense detail and I'm going to upload it into our accounting system, what else does our accounting system need? Is there anything that I might be missing? So you want to that's where it's nice to kind of work with other people too, to kind of have other people give their opinion on how things work. Not only do you need to plan for this part of it, what questions are going to go into it, you have to think about what data type is going to be used as well. Because of course, yes, in forms, we have different data types, and that's in your handout as well. Lays out the names of it and a description of it, but I'll be showing you the data types here as we build a form. So let's say that we decided we want to build an expense reimbursement form. We'll just do something a little bit simple. I won't go through and put in every one of these fields, but you want to think about what is most important. What are the things that we really need? And a lot of I got it. I am seriously a big planner, and I've done this for many, many, many years. I've worked with forms, and because I used to do a lot of customer satisfaction forms. I've been in IT for a very long time and did forms for health help desk and things like that. But anyway, a lot of times I use Excel for my planning. So I can plan out each column as being the question, and then I'll say, here's what the question is, here's the type of answer I want them to give. Whether it's going to be text, it's going to be a date field, the answer needs to be multi-line because it's going to be a comment, it's going to be a Likert scale I want them to use, it's going to be a multiple choice, whatever it is that you need, you can have a column for that. So that when you go to build it, you don't have to stop and think, or what did everybody agree upon? That can automatically be ready to go. Another way that I've done that is in OneNote notebooks. I've actually done that if I'm collaborating with a group of people and we're all putting our brainstorming together in this OneNote notebook. I use a table. So it can either be an Excel spreadsheet or a table, something like that where you're going to have your columns and rows. Works great. I really like it. Like I said, I've also done it with loop components. But anyway, let's go back to Microsoft Forms. And what we're going to do is create a blank form. I'm going to go to the top left and I'm just going to click New Form. So once I come into New Form, you're going to see that I do have a choice of drafting the form with Copilot. So if you have a Copilot license, you're going to have some additional options that you can be using. On the left-hand side, I could also go into templates. I could go directly into templates. Now, just to explain a little bit about the window that you're seeing, up at the top, you have a place to name the form. So if I want to give the form a specific name, like it's going to be an expense reimbursement form, I would click at the top and give it that name. So I'm going to go into the form title. I'm going to change that to say expense. Come on, close that. Okay, my mouse is being really weird. I'll come back and do that. But anyway, I would want to get the form saved. Whether I do it right now or I do it later, you will need to, of course, save the form and give it a useful name. And that's kind of part of my planning too, is I want to plan what we're going to name it. But anyway, the rest of the screen that I wanted to point out for you is when you look at the tools that we have going across the top. We'll get into a little bit on the styles, the settings. You'll need to be using preview as well. Because you need to preview what it's going to end up looking like. And then we'll talk about the collect responses, view responses, and the present and your menu at the top right, the dot, dot, dot. So we'll talk about how you can use that because we still could print the form if we have people that are going to be walking in the door and they don't have a kiosk that they can sit at to fill out the form online. We could really have people be filling the forms out, just so you're aware. So just to give you a little bit more, if I wanted to do this with Copilot, I could come directly to Copilot and describe what it is that I would like in for my form. So if I want this to be an expense, an employee expense report form, I could bring that in and say, this is what I want to create. Now I'll just put employee expense form and see what it comes back with on Copilot. Pretty fast and pretty cool. So basically what it did, it says remove the questions you don't want. So on the right-hand side, I could delete the questions I don't want to include, but it's giving me a lot of the detail that I was thinking about that I would need on this form anyway. It's giving me my full name, their employee ID number, the date of the expense, the category, which of course we can expand and make changes to any of this. We can add different questions in between. It's giving us the amount and the upload. Now I'm going to say, yeah, I want to keep this. So down at the bottom, I'm going to click keep it, and it is created automatically for me. Now I could have gone to the left-hand side into templates and done blank from there. But if you have Copilot, highly recommend using Copilot to do this. So it's going through and making sure everything is complete. So it's coming back and letting me know I have 5 suggestions for your form. So I could go to view detail and it can give me some refinements, optimization. It can give me different suggestions. I'm going to say finish reviewing. I'm not going to use any of the suggestions for right now, but just so you know, you do have, if you have a Copilot license, you can be incorporating that as well. So what it has in here right now is it has the title up at the top. I can click on that title. And by the way, that's what it used for the name when it saved it. But I could go back and make changes to the name if I needed to. Otherwise, where it says, please fill out this form to request reimbursement for your expense. That is a description that appears at the top to let them know what they need to do. If you had further instructions, which if you have a form that, you need to describe what it is and, all those types of details, you're going to want to put that in that description, whatever they need to know and see right away at the top. Then I have the ability at the top right, there's this little icon where it says insert, paste, or drag media. If I click that, I can insert images. I can go to my OneDrive. I can upload them. So if I have a logo or something like that that I want to be putting in, we do have the capability of doing that. So this is going to be money related. So I'm going to go ahead and do a search for money. Just so you could see, I could choose an image and have it automatically. It's telling me it couldn't download it to try again, but it's probably just my connection. But anyway, it will put that image right at the top. Now, today is more of an introduction. We won't get into too much more on that right now, but just so you could see that you could do that. When you look at the rest of this, we can go to any of these questions and make changes to them. But notice where it says full name, it's got this star after it. If you click on that actual field, on that question, it opens up a menu of choices where I could copy the question, I could delete it, or I could move it up and down within the list of where the questions appear. We also have the ability of adding an insert of media, an image, that kind of thing to go along with this. So if they needed to watch a video before they answer the question, on the right-hand side, we could insert that video. But where it says required is how the star, the red star, got added there. So you can see that most of these are required to fill out. So that's what that star means, and this is where it came into. If I want this to be a long answer because it is text, I could choose to have this be a long answer. So just as you can see, as I go down, we can see that this is please input a date. So it was smart enough to make that formatted as a date field. If I click on it, if I needed to change it from being required or any of these other options, I, of course, would do that. So as we kind of look at it, I could go down to the amount, and the amount, if I wanted that not to be required or change things, we certainly could. At any time, we can insert a new question by simply clicking. So whichever field you're active on, you can always add it to go underneath it. So if I say insert new question, here's going to be a list of your options of the types of questions you can bring in. So it can be a multi-choice, it could be text, it could be a rating, it could be a date, it could be a ranking, Likert scale, having them upload a file, a net promoter scale, or it can be a section. We won't get into sections today. It's more of an advanced feature, but we could actually be creating sections like if I wanted employee information, expense information, approval information. We could create sections, give it a name, and then put questions in that section. Then they go to the next section, etc. Just so you know, you could do that. So let's say that I decided, I wanted to use a choice. Once I click it, I would put in what the question is. So maybe I want it to be a category. So I'll just say, categorize your expense as an example. Yes, it has built-in spell check, which is fantastic. If I needed to put in a subtitle, I could do that. But then you can go and put in what you want for your options to be. So